One weekend changed my life forever. I walked into a lavish mansion and found my wife in bed with her boss. "Kurt, I'm spending the night with Chet," she declared. My world shattered. But that was just the beginning. I left silently, my mind racing with a plan. She thought she could betray me and get away with it. Little did she know, my revenge would be ruthless. I documented every sordid detail. At the company gala, I unveiled their deceit to everyone. This isn't just a story of betrayal, it's a tale of vengeance. This is my story. Watch it unfold. "Kurt, you let him ride your horse all day. It's only fair that he rides yours tonight." She said this as she turned and walked out of the bedroom. "What the heck?" I muttered to myself. I couldn't stop thinking about everything that happened the day before. It all started when we drove to Audra's boss's house in Rolling Hills, California. Audra was excited but also a bit nervous. This was the first time her boss, Chet Halverson, had invited the heads of his departments to his home. We would stay until Sunday evening and then go back to our condo in Los Angeles. As I thought about the drive, I wondered if this had been planned all along. Maybe nothing was set in stone, just suggestions thrown around. If I was already upset when she left after saying that, I felt even angrier now thinking about it. I kept remembering last night and everything that happened today. When we reached the gated community, a security guard greeted us. This part of LA had many famous and rich people. We drove to one of the biggest houses, and I was honestly impressed. I could tell Audra was amazed too. The house was huge, probably around 10,000 square feet, and had 2 stories in an Italian style. I knew Audra's company was big and global, but I never thought it would be big enough for the owner to have a house like this, especially in such a fancy place. When he met us at the door, he was nice, but had a bit of an air of superiority. By 7 o'clock, all the department heads had arrived. Audra was the director of human resources, and I was proud of her. At 29, she had already been a leader at 3 different companies, and this was her latest promotion. There were 4 other couples there, and dinner was filled with fun conversation and some work talk. I felt a little out of place. As a technology engineer, I usually work alone or just with a few others. I think I managed to keep up in the conversation, though. I may be a nerd, but I'm not socially awkward. That night, in our room, Audra was really into it, and we spent an hour together enjoying each other's company. Afterward, we cuddled and fell asleep, both smiling. I woke up early and lay still, looking at my beautiful wife. We met at a Starbucks. She had grabbed her latte and turned around quickly, bumping into me. The lid flew off and hot coffee spilled all over my shirt. Ouch! I gasped and stepped back, trying to adjust my shirt. I wasn't even looking at her. I was focused on my stained shirt. Great! Now I need to buy a new one, I thought. Audra was super sorry when I finally looked at her. "I'm so sorry. Are you okay? What can I do?" She paused, and we locked eyes. I can't say it was love at first sight. I'm smart enough to know that's not really a thing. But I did feel an instant pull towards this woman who was a bit flustered about something. She asked me, "Can I pay to have it cleaned or buy you a new one if it doesn't come clean?" She sounded really sorry. I replied, "Don't worry about it. It's an old shirt anyway. It has probably seen better days." I thought I was being smooth, and it made her laugh. That was 5 years ago. We dated for a couple of years and then got married. This morning, I felt like I was on top of the world. I woke up to Audra kissing me and taking advantage of my morning mood. We spent some special time together, and she told me she loved me. After we showered and got dressed, we went to the dining room where breakfast was set up like a buffet. We grabbed plates and sat down to eat. We were almost done when Chet walked in from his barn. He was dressed to ride. "So everyone, I have horses to ride on the community trails. I can show you some of my famous friends' houses," he said. Rolling Hills is a horse community, so a lot of people here have horses, and there are trails all around. We were going to enjoy those trails. I grew up in the Midwest with horses on my family farm. I felt comfortable around them. I used to be part of 4-H and even competed when I was a teenager. I smiled, remembering those fun times riding. I was excited to ride again since it had been almost 10 years. Chet continued, "I have horses for beginners and some for experienced riders. Let's go to the barn and we'll match you with a horse based on your skills." I was really impressed with his barn, the quality of the horses and the gear. Since we have a big group, I borrowed a few horses from my neighbors. They're all great animals, so don't worry, he said, sounding a bit smug as if he thought we were all city folks who didn't know about horses. I didn't like that attitude. I spoke up, I'd like to ride this thoroughbred. I walked over to a beautiful horse standing proudly in her stall. She wasn't even ready to ride. Whoa, Chet exclaimed. Brandy has a strong personality. I don't think she's a good choice for you. I opened the stall and approached the horse calmly, showing her that I was experienced. She didn't flinch, sensing that I was confident. Chet noticed and gave a smirk, saying, If you really want to ride Brandy, I have to warn you, I'm not responsible if she throws you off. I saw that he was trying to scare me and also impress the others. Audra looked at me and said, Kurt, maybe you should listen to Chet and pick another horse. Her words stung my pride a bit. TTP code 502 from API, 502 bad gateway, 502 bad gateway Cloudflare. I was only half paying attention. My thoughts were already outside, thinking about riding fast over the hills. As some guests began to leave to change out of their dirty, sweaty clothes, Chet spoke up. So, Kurt, do you still think you can handle Brandy in the open country? I knew he wanted to make me give up, and I think Audra felt it too. Honey, she said, let's just relax and chat with the others. She wanted to stop me from embarrassing myself or upsetting her boss, but I didn't like how he acted like he was better than everyone else, so I replied, I'd love to ride, but I don't want to take you away from your guests. Now I had either challenged him or given him a way out. I could see he hoped I would fail, so he said, They can find something to do for a couple of hours. Let's see what you've got. As I stood up to go to the barn, Audra shot me a look that clearly said, Don't mess this up. She didn't want me to do anything that would make her boss look bad. While riding, I noticed he was trying to show off his riding skills. Still, I could tell he knew I could ride well, too. We took our horses, my thoroughbred and his quarter horse, into the open field and let them run. I felt completely in sync with Brandy. She was amazing. I forgot everything else. When we slowed down and climbed a hill, I looked back to see Chet at least a quarter mile behind me. We stopped at the top of the hill and waited for Chet to catch up. I could tell he was annoyed. He didn't say anything to me. We rode on, letting Chet go first, mostly to boost his ego, not because I didn't know the trails. Too soon we were back at his house. I guided Brandy right to the barn and her stall. Chet got off his horse at the barn entrance and said, I should check on my guests. His tone made it clear I was no longer welcome. I spent an hour taking off Brandy's gear and giving her a good rub-down. I missed this. Growing up with horses was such a wonderful time. As I walked to the house, I saw Chet talking to Audra. He was standing too close to her, and I didn't like that. She turned to me, looking a bit nervous and annoyed. I approached her, and she said, You smell. Go take a shower and change for dinner. What a nice welcome. She must really be upset. I went to our room and decided to shave, shower, and dress nicely for dinner. I needed to win back her respect. When I came out to join the group, they were all sitting on the patio. Chet and Audra were deep in conversation. When I walked up, they stopped talking and Audra looked guilty. What were they discussing? I wondered. Dinner was pleasant, but Audra still seemed distant. She avoided looking at me. It was almost 9 o'clock when we finished eating, having dessert and enjoying drinks. We went to our room and Audra barely spoke. She went into the bathroom with her overnight bag and closed the door. I could hear the shower running. She was in there for 15 minutes, and then it felt like ages before she came out. By then, I had taken off my clothes and gotten into bed. Finally, she came out wearing a lovely outfit that I had bought for her during one of our trips. She looked amazing. At first, I thought the night might be cold, but now it felt like a chance to get closer to her after a long day. But then she put on her robe, turned to me, and said, Kurt, I'm spending the night with Chet. I couldn't believe what I heard. I stared at her in shock. What? You heard me. I'm spending the night with Chet. What? Is this some kind of joke? No, I'm attracted to him, and he asked me. But you're the HR director. You know that's wrong. It's just one night. You'll get over it. If you do this, we are done. Oh, come on, Kurt. This won't change anything. You've got to be kidding. I can't believe we're even talking about this. You don't own me, she said, a familiar line from someone wanting to do something wrong. "If you go through with this, forget about our marriage," I yelled. Then she said something that sounded like Chet had told her. "Kurt, you rode his horse all day. It's only fair he gets to spend the night with you." Then she left. I sat on the bed, shocked. I should have run after her, but the idea that she thought she could do this and return like nothing happened was crazy. She could go wherever she wanted. I stood up and started pacing the room. I walked to her side of the bed and noticed something on her nightstand. Her wedding band and engagement ring were sitting there, the same rings I put on her finger when we got married. I took off my ring and stared at it. I squeezed it tightly in my left hand, raised it over my head, and slammed it down onto the nightstand. The rings jumped when I pulled my hand back quickly, rubbing my palm with my thumb. Ouch! That hurt! I looked at my hand, and there was a red mark on my palm. Then something changed. It was like a switch turned off in my mind. All my feelings went away. I packed my clothes and toiletries into my overnight bag and walked out of the bedroom without looking back. I walked through the house with my bag and went out the side door to my car. I drove through the community and waved at the guard as I left. The ride home was quiet, with not much traffic for a Saturday night. I rubbed my left palm without thinking. If I had looked at it, I would have seen a bruise forming. About an hour later, I got home to my condo. I walked in and looked around. Kurt looked around and thought about why he had so much stuff. He took his bag into the bedroom and tossed his clothes into the laundry basket. Then he climbed into bed and quickly fell asleep. The next morning, he woke up to find his hand bruised. He made himself some breakfast and sat at the table, reading the news on his phone while rubbing his hand softly. Suddenly, his phone rang. He glanced at the number, but it was unfamiliar. Still, he decided to answer. "Hello?" he said. There was no reply. He waited for about 10 seconds before hanging up. He figured it was just another spam call, so he blocked the number like he usually did with calls he didn't want. After breakfast, Kurt decided to go for a run. It had been years since he ran regularly. He used to do 5K and 10K races often. He wasn't sure why he had stopped. Since he hadn't run in a long time, he took it easy and ran just 2 miles. He was out of breath when he got back. He realized he was out of shape and promised himself he would run every day. Audra on Sunday morning. Audra walked into the bedroom around 9 a.m. The first thing she noticed was that Kurt was not there. She turned and headed to the dining room to check if he had maybe had too much to drink and fallen asleep there. But he wasn't there either. A feeling of fear crept over her. Where could he be? She returned to the bedroom and saw that Kurt's overnight bag was missing. She went to check if the car was still parked outside. But of course, it wasn't. She had feared this, but also expected it. He was very angry when she left him. She couldn't blame him. She had rejected him, all for a moment that didn't even thrill her. Her hips hurt from riding the horse, and she felt terrible for hurting Kurt. Tears filled her eyes, and she sat down on the edge of the bed. What had she done? Chet had been so charming, and his power and money had swayed her. But Kurt was not easy to talk to when she told him not to go riding, which made her choose to leave him. While she cried, she dialed Kurt's number. He answered with a quiet, "Hello?" "Oh, Kurt, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me, I'm sorry. Can you come back? We need to talk about this. Please forgive me," she begged. But there was silence on the other end. He had hung up. She tried to call him again, but he didn't pick up. "Oh, God, what am I going to do?" she said. She wiped her eyes and looked at her nightstand. Her rings were sitting there out of place, and his wedding band was in the middle of the nightstand. "Oh, no," she whispered, and reached for his ring. When she picked it up, she noticed a perfect circle where it had rested on the wood, a reminder of their marriage. She remembered putting that ring on Kurt's finger and saying their vows in front of friends and family. And then she began to cry harder than ever. About half an hour later, she stepped into the dining room where the others were finishing their breakfast. Her eyes were red and puffy. "Audra, are you okay?" one of the other directors asked. She sniffled, straightened her back, and said, "Can someone give me a ride back to town when you leave?" They didn't ask questions. They understood what had probably happened. They had seen Chet trying to get close to her yesterday. The wife of one of the directors said, "Of course, dear. We can leave whenever you're ready." Audra felt that she was not happy about what had happened between Chet and her. She turned and went to pack her things. She put her rings back on her finger. She knew fixing her marriage would not be easy. She wished that Kurt would put on his ring just as easily, but she wasn't sure he would. She took off her robe and looked at the teddy she was wearing, the one Kurt had bought for her. How could she have done this? What was she thinking? Clearly, she hadn't been thinking of Kurt or their marriage. She started crying again as she took a shower, trying to wash away the feeling of guilt that seemed to stick to her. She felt so dirty. After about 20 minutes, she realized she couldn't wash off the guilt. She stepped out of the shower and dried herself off. Looking into the mirror, she noticed there were no marks showing what she had done. She wouldn't have to hide from Kurt. She got dressed and packed her things. She skipped putting on makeup, knowing she would just cry again. When she walked into the living room with her bag, the couple who had offered her a ride home were already waiting. They had packed their suitcase in the car. "Okay, dear," she said. "Let's get you home." The car ride was mostly quiet. What could they say? What could she say? It was past noon when she walked into their rented condo. It felt empty, and she sensed that Kurt wasn't there. She went straight to his dresser and opened a drawer. His clothes were still there. Well, that's a good sign, she said to herself. She thought he might have left. After Kurt showered to clean off the sweat from his run, he decided to go out and enjoy the nice weather. Maybe he would walk along the beach. When he got into his car, he put his hand on the steering wheel and quickly pulled it back. His hand hurt and was bruised. He thought about going to the doctor, but he shrugged it off. After his walk on the beach, he felt great. It was lunchtime, so he decided to grab a bite to eat. An In-N-Out burger sounded perfect. He sat inside and watched the people around him. There was one couple in their early 20s that caught his attention. He wasn't sure what was special about them, but he kept looking at them. They only seemed to notice each other, unaware of him watching. He smiled at that. After lunch, he thought about taking a drive down the coast. While the hills looked beautiful, something was bothering him as he drove through them. Audra all day, Audra tried to call Kurt, but every time it went to voicemail. She really wanted him to call her back. It was already 5 o'clock and she hadn't heard anything. She felt worried. What if he didn't come back at all? She thought about calling one of their friends, but wasn't sure how to explain why he was not with her. They all knew it was the weekend her boss had invited them to his house in Rolling Hills. She had told everyone about it. She was cleaning, something she did when she got anxious, when she heard the front door open. She left the bathroom and saw Kurt drop onto the couch, grab the remote, and turn on the TV. "Oh, Kurt, I'm so glad you're back. I'm really sorry for what I did. Can you please forgive me?" He didn't answer. He just stared at the TV. "Kurt, can you talk to me?" she asked, moving closer to him. He continued to ignore her. She hated how he did that. When he was upset, he would not talk to her. She raised her voice. "Kurt, don't ignore me. Talk to me." He sat there, focused on the TV. She picked up the remote from the coffee table and turned off the TV. He looked confused and said, "Now what?" He seemed to be searching for the remote. "Kurt, you have to talk to me. I told you I was sorry. Please, just talk to me." Kurt started searching the couch and even the floor for the remote. Audra felt angry that he was playing this game. He kept looking, so she tossed the remote onto the couch and said, "There's your remote. Grow up, and when you are ready, we need to talk." Kurt found the remote where she had thrown it. He looked at it in surprise, picked it up, shrugged, and turned the TV back on. Audra shouted, "Shut the TV off and talk to me!" Kurt stayed quiet, still watching the TV. Frustrated, Audra stormed out of the room and slammed the bedroom door. After a tense drive through the hills near LA, Kurt decided it was time to go home. He felt tired from being out all day. When he walked in the door, he flopped down on the couch, grabbed the remote, turned on the TV, and set the remote aside. He was watching TV when it suddenly turned off. Confused, he said, "Now what?" and looked for the remote. He searched the couch and the floor, but it was missing. When he looked to his left, he saw nothing. When he looked to his right, there it was, sitting on the cushion he had just checked. "What the heck?" he thought. He turned the TV back on and went back to watching his show. A minute later, the bedroom door slammed shut. "I guess the wind pushed it closed," he thought. After a while, Kurt felt hungry and decided to order pizza. He ordered a small deluxe pizza. $25 for a small pizza delivered. That doesn't even include a tip, he thought. Living here is way too expensive. Audra. The jerk completely ignored me, she said, feeling furious. She should have seen it coming. He often acted this way. Whenever they fought, he chose to keep quiet. But this time felt worse than any fight before. She wished he would yell at her, glare at her, anything but turn away. She needed to know he still cared. Tears fell down her face again. She had to find a way to make things right. She must have dozed off because when she opened her eyes, it was dark. She got out of bed and went to the living room to check on Kurt. An empty pizza box was on the coffee table, but Kurt was not there. She looked in the bathroom and then at the guest bedroom, but it was locked. With a heavy heart, she returned to their bedroom. Curtain Monday morning, Kurt woke up early. He was eager to start his training. He wanted to sign up for some 5K runs as soon as this weekend. He found a Planet Fitness gym near his work and joined. After 45 minutes on the treadmill, he took a shower and got dressed for work. While running, he thought about why he was living in California. Sure, there were good things, but for him, the bad things, like the high costs, traffic, and expensive homes, were too much and made it hard for him to enjoy his job. Kurt worked at Northrop Grumman as an engineering technologist. Yes, he was a bit of a nerd. But today, he was a nerd looking for change. He decided to talk to his boss about moving to a different state. He knew he might earn less money, but the lower living costs would help a lot. After all, nothing was holding him here. At work, he approached his boss. "Sir, I want to know about transferring," he said. "To a different department?" his boss asked. "No, to a different state. I need to get out of California." "Wow, I wish my wife would let me leave this place. The high housing costs and all the crazy drivers stress me out. You're lucky to have this chance." His boss helped him connect with HR, and by the end of the day, he found possible jobs in Wyoming and Montana. There would be interviews, but with his boss's help and his good work history, he felt confident. After work, Kurt headed back to the gym. He wanted to lift weights to build his stamina. On the way home, he grabbed some Thai food for dinner. When he walked in the door at 7 o'clock, he sat on the couch and opened his food. Feeling thirsty, he went to the fridge and grabbed a beer. Another evening alone in front of the TV, eating takeout. What a life, he thought. Audra woke up on Monday morning and glanced at the empty side of the big bed. She knew he had slept in the guest room because his side of the bed was untouched. Maybe he will speak to me this morning, she hoped as she walked to the bathroom. When she got there, she saw that his toothbrush, razor, and deodorant were missing. Did he move them to the guest room? She wondered. She knocked on the door, but there was no answer. She tried the door handle. It was open. When she walked in, she saw he was already gone. She grabbed her phone and called him again, but it went straight to voicemail. She decided to wait and talk to him later that evening. At work, Audra noticed that people were acting strange around her. It seemed the events of the weekend were not a secret anymore. She would need to speak to them about keeping personal matters private. Maybe she could stop the rumors from spreading further. The day felt long. She really wanted to be home. Kurt usually got back by 5:30, and she wanted to have his favorite meal ready for him. At 4 o'clock, she left work a little early and had chicken Alfredo ready by 5:25. She practiced what she would say to him. By 6 o'clock, she started to feel worried. She checked his clothes and saw they were all still there, which was a relief. He hadn't moved out. By 6:30, she was getting angry. The food was in the oven, keeping warm. She tried calling him again, but got no answer. So she waited, staring at the clock. The numbers seemed to change so slowly. At 6:50, she sat at the table and put her head down. Her feelings went from waiting to worry to anger and finally to despair. He was over an hour late, and he hadn't called. She really wanted to hear his voice. Finally, at 7:03, Kurt walked in the door. Audra jumped up to take the food out of the oven. Kurt came into the kitchen, and Audra said, "I made your favorite. I'll put it on the table in a minute." Kurt opened the fridge, took a beer, and walked back to the living room. Audra placed the casserole dish on the table and looked at Kurt, who was already eating from takeout containers. "Kurt, I made dinner. Could you at least come to the table to eat it? You don't even have to talk." she said. He didn't answer. He didn't even look up. "Kurt, please, you need to stop this. Say something," she cried out again. Still, he did not respond. "Well, fine," she shouted, scooping the chicken Alfredo into the garbage before storming off to the bedroom. She needed to find a way to reach him. What could she do? After about 30 minutes, she went back to the living room. "Kurt, can you please look at me? Can we talk?" she pleaded softly. Kurt didn't reply. He just kept watching TV. She decided to speak first. "Look, Kurt, I know you're upset. I get it. What I did was wrong. I wish I could change it, but I can't. How do we move past this? Please talk to me. What do you want me to do?" She thought about offering to quit her job, but she had worked hard to get it. The job was important to her and made her feel good. Kurt kept ignoring her. She felt really sad. What could she do? Not sure what to try next, she sat on the couch next to him. She knew not to hug or kiss him. From past fights, she learned that when he was angry, he didn't want any touch. So she sat quietly beside him. For an hour, he laughed sometimes at a funny show, but he didn't say a word to her. At 8:30, he turned off the TV, stood up, and went to the bathroom to get ready for bed. She stayed on the couch in the dark, tears rolling down her face. She realized she needed to give him time. She had hurt him deeply, and healing would take a long time. She just hoped he would give her that chance. On Tuesday, Kurt woke up early and went to the gym, his mind wandering while he ran on the treadmill. He decided on Wyoming. It was close enough to Nebraska, his home state, but far enough away that people wouldn't expect him to visit often. He liked being alone. When he got to work, HR had a message for him. He called them, and they told him that both Montana and Wyoming wanted to interview him. He decided to try for both, even though Wyoming was his favorite. Wanting to move quickly, he set up video interviews for the same day. With the time difference, he needed to do it soon. At 1 o'clock, he had his interview with Montana. He thought it went well, and they seemed to really need someone like him. But Wyoming captured his interest more, especially because they were working on drones with lasers. He felt very excited about this, and his current job skills would help. "When can you start?" they asked him. "Give me this week to finish my work here. Then I need a week to move. Can I start the first week of October?" he replied. "That sounds good," his new boss said. "If you need any help, just call me or my assistant. We'll help you settle in." So, that week, Kurt went to the gym early and stayed late at work to keep all his projects on track. This meant that when Audra had dinner ready on Tuesday at 5:30, he wasn't home. By Thursday night, she didn't even bother cooking. Every night, Kurt came home late. He either stopped for takeout or ate somewhere else before getting home. Audra tried to talk to him, but he wouldn't respond. On Friday night, his friends took him out to a bar for a goodbye party. He didn't get home until almost 11 o'clock and was a bit drunk. He fell asleep on the couch. Audra felt frustrated and hurt by Kurt's silence. She called a friend from work and set up a breakfast meeting. She needed to talk about her problems. Her friend had been divorced, so maybe she could give some advice on how to fix her marriage. Audra wanted to learn from someone else's mistakes. When Kurt woke up, he took some aspirin and made himself coffee. After that, he began packing his clothes and things. 2 hours later, he was surprised to see everything ready in his car. His lease still had 3 months left, so he would have to pay more, but he was happy to leave his awful state behind. He got into the car and drove away. As he left the complex, he saw another car coming in. He didn't think much of it. He had a long drive ahead. Audra saw Kurt's car as she drove in. "I wonder where he's going," she wondered. She had talked to Melanie about her divorce, learning how it happened and asking for advice on saving her marriage. Melanie had cheated with a family friend. By the time she realized what was happening, her friend was already gone, moving away far from them. Melanie's story worried Audra. Most men, she said, wouldn't handle the idea of their partner being with someone else well. If she thought about it, Audra would feel the same way if Kurt had cheated. How could she fix this? She couldn't erase it from his mind. When Audra walked into their condo, something felt off. She entered the living room and saw that the TV, DVD player, and game console were missing. "Oh no!" she gasped, rushing to the bedroom. All his clothes and toiletries were gone. She fell onto the bed. It was too late. In less than a week, he had left without saying a word or leaving a note. Panicking, she grabbed her phone and called all of their friends. She didn't care about hiding her own mistakes anymore. Mistake, she thought. That's what it really was. None of their friends knew where Kurt was or had heard from him in over a week. She avoided calling his parents. They were in Nebraska, and she doubted he had gone there. What was she going to do? She felt hopeless. Work had been tough for her lately. She had to talk to guys more than once who were making passes at her. She told them clearly that she did not welcome their attention and it was not okay. Despite the gossip about last weekend, she found herself getting called HR bitch behind her back. She didn't mind the name if it meant the rumors would stop and the guys would leave her alone. She felt hopeless but still called Kurt. Of course, he didn't answer, and her call went to voicemail. She left a message anyway. Kurt, I saw you leave. I don't know where you're going. I wish you would talk to me. I love you. I'm really sorry for what I did. I don't know how to make things right. I messed up. Please call me. I just want to hear your voice. She hung up and didn't say her usual goodbye. She knew it would sound empty this time. Kurt had a plan. He wanted to drive to St. George, Utah today. Driving through the desert was hard. There wasn't much to see, so it felt like a long 10-hour trip, even though it would likely only take 7 or 8 hours. He would find a motel to stay in and wake up early to continue his drive through Utah and into Wyoming. As he drove, he thought about his life. Going to college in Arizona was very different from his old life in the Midwest, but Embry-Riddle helped him shine. It made him a strong candidate for a job at Northrop Grumman. When they invited him to work there, he was so happy. It felt like a dream come true. The years passed quickly, and he barely remembered them. Most of his time, he realized, was spent at work. Now, with California behind him, he looked forward to starting fresh in a new place. He hoped for new challenges and maybe to find someone special to share his life with. He felt an emptiness inside when he thought about that. On Monday morning, Audra decided to take some time off work. She wanted to see Kurt at his job. Since he was a military contractor, security wouldn't let her pass the front desk. When she asked to see Kurt, they told her he was not available. She didn't believe them. She thought they were covering for him. So, she asked to speak with his boss. When Mr. Haven came down to talk to her, he looked confused. "How can I help you, Mrs. Bryant?" he asked. "I need to see Kurt. I know he's avoiding me, but I really need to talk to him. I'm a bit confused. Kurt isn't here. Friday was his last day." "He quit?" "No. Last Monday he asked to transfer. He said he wanted to leave this hellhole, California." "So where did he go?" I'm not sure I can give you that information. If he didn't tell you, there must be a good reason. You're the HR director, so I know you get it." "So, he left California?" "I probably shouldn't have said that much," he replied. She realized she wouldn't get any more from him, so she said, "Thanks. If you talk to him, please tell him I want to chat." She could tell he understood there was a problem and that she wanted to fix it. When she got to her car, she looked around the parking lot. She wondered if he was lying to protect Kurt. After searching for a minute, she felt let down. Kurt's car was not there. Mr. Haven had told her the truth. Kurt driving through Utah and into Wyoming on Sunday was amazing. The views were stunning. He had never driven through Utah before, always flying home from LA for the holidays. Now that he was just one state away, he would have to spend more time there. Finding a hotel in Cheyenne was easy. It was late September, and the tourist season was winding down. He chose a Town Place Suites by Marriott since it would give him time to look for a nice townhouse or condo while allowing him to cook his own meals. It also had a gym so he could keep up his training. He would look into changing his Planet Fitness membership to Cheyenne. He might need to cancel it and start a new one. He remembered he also needed to open a new bank account and have his work change his direct deposit. Plus, he would need to update his driver's license. He thought he should start a list. On Monday, he began to work through his list. The DMV was just as he expected: grab a number and wait. Luckily, it didn't take as long as he feared. They were quite efficient. Setting up a new bank account was easier, too. They even gave him a debit card that day. He planned to wait until he got his checks before closing his California accounts. By 2 o'clock, he had finished everything on his list. He decided to stop by his new job and introduce himself to his boss. His boss was very helpful, even giving him tips on which areas of town to avoid and where to find good homes. After chatting for about half an hour, Kurt thought they would get along well. Wyoming seemed like it would be a great change in his life, maybe even a place to stay for good. Weeks passed. Kurt settled into his new job while Audra tried to find him, but with no success. That's when Audra decided to take a big step. She picked up the phone and called Kurt's parents. She was sure he had shared details about her actions. They were church-going folks, and she thought if they talked to her, it would be tough. "Hello, Carol, it's Audra," she said hesitantly. "Carol? Why so formal? You can just call me Mom." Audra felt confused. Did Kurt really go a whole month without calling his parents? "Sorry, Mom. How have you been?" "I'm good. How do you like Wyoming?" "So that's where he is," Audra thought. "It's okay," Audra said. Then she took a chance and asked, "What has Kurt said about it?" "Oh, you know Kurt. He doesn't talk much. He said he's happy to be out of California. I was surprised you didn't try to change his mind." "Well, we did talk about it. I think you'll learn to like the Midwest. Just give it a chance." "Okay, thanks, Mom. I have to go now, but I'll keep in touch." Audra hung up. She felt lost. Kurt left without saying anything but seemed to be hiding that from his parents. Was there still hope for them? If he didn't tell his parents everything, maybe he wanted to fix their relationship. But how could they do that if he wouldn't answer her calls? At least now she knew where he was. She decided to buy a prepaid phone and call Kurt from it. Maybe he would talk to her now that some time had passed. She went to a store and bought one. "He has to answer," she said to herself. She dialed his number. "Welcome to Verizon Wireless. The number you have dialed has been changed, disconnected, or is no longer in service. Please check the number and dial again." She looked at the phone to make sure she had the right number. Yes, it was Kurt's number, or at least it used to be. Great. He must have a new number. What was she supposed to do now? She couldn't call her mother-in-law again for the new number. Well, she knew he was in Wyoming and moved for work, so that was a starting point. She searched for Northrop Grumman's website and found an office in Cheyenne, the capital. But how could she find him in a city with 100,000 people? She thought about hiring a private detective, but would that help? She still needed to talk to him, so she decided to take a week off to find him herself. Kurt at work. Kurt was getting along well and starting to feel like part of the team. It was late October, and the HR department was reminding everyone that it was time to pick benefits for the next year. As Kurt looked over his benefits, he noticed he was on a family plan instead of a single plan. This must be a mistake, he thought. He switched to the single plan for the next year and asked about getting a refund. HR checked and told him he had chosen the family plan last fall. They could not change it now. Kurt was confused and mindlessly rubbed his left palm. As he looked down at his hand, he felt a hard spot about the size of a nickel under his skin. He thought to himself, "I should have my hand checked." Audra 3 weeks after talking to Kurt's mom, Audra sat outside his work, waiting for him to drive out of the parking lot. At 5:30, she finally saw his car and decided to follow him. He went to Planet Fitness and went inside. Should she go in and confront him? What if he ignored her again and drove away before she could follow him? Then she would lose the chance to find out where he lived. She couldn't just sit and chat with him like a normal couple. No, it was better to wait. About an hour later, Kurt came out and got in his car. Audra followed him to the hotel where he was staying. She felt angry that he had left her, and nervous about how to talk to him. Should she just knock on his door? Say, "Hi, can we talk?" In her car, she thought of every possible outcome. He could get mad, but that wasn't really Kurt. He might yell at her, which she would deserve, and honestly, it would be better than what he had done at home. What if he ignored her and wouldn't talk? They needed to sort things out. She knew she had messed up. Even while it happened, she felt it, but Kurt hadn't listened to her. Instead, he went out to show off to Chet, and that made her really mad. He could have been supportive, but instead, he put her job in danger. By the time she realized it was a mistake, she was already in bed with Chet. The harm was done. Finally, she built up the courage to walk to his door and ring the doorbell. She could hear Kurt inside as he came to the door. She knew he was looking at her through the peephole. After about 10 seconds, he turned away. She started knocking and pleaded with him to open up and talk to her. Still, there was no answer. Now she was really angry. She began banging on the door, ringing the bell, and shouting for Kurt to open up. The neighbors from the next unit stepped outside to see what was happening. She stopped. "What are you doing?" they asked, sounding suspicious. "I'm trying to get my husband to open the door and talk to me," she shouted. "Husband? Kurt lives here. He's not married. You must have the wrong place." "He is my husband. We've been married for 3 years." The wife of the couple said flatly, "We've had him over for dinner a few times and he insisted he was single. He dated someone in college, but that ended. I don't know what you're trying to do, but if you don't leave, we will call the police." Audra was stunned. He was telling everyone he was single. How could he? She thought. Kurt inside his apartment. Kurt had just gotten home. He tossed his gym clothes in the washer and put on some comfy sweats. Then the doorbell rang. He walked over and looked through the small hole in the door. "That's strange," he said to himself. No one was there. A few minutes later, he heard his neighbors talking outside. It sounded a bit like they were having an argument. They were a nice couple, and he hoped everything would be okay. As he stood there, he absent-mindedly rubbed his hand, feeling the small mark under his skin. Audra. "The police won't help with this," Audra said to herself, so she went back to her car. She needed to find a way to get Kurt to talk to her. Sitting in her car, she thought about their time together. If she hadn't been so clumsy, they might never have started dating. She remembered how it took 3 months for them to become close. Audra had wanted to be closer long before that, but Kurt liked to take his time and really get to know her. The first time they were close was special and filled with love. He touched her in ways that felt new and deep. She felt he was the one for her. Why had she done what she did? She knew Kurt's strong values from the Midwest would never allow it. Chet was charming and strong. It felt like she had no control. That was what she kept telling herself, even though she knew it wasn't true. Deep down, she knew it was wrong and could ruin their marriage. But Chet was so persuasive, especially after Kurt showed off his skills. Why did Kurt have to upset him? She realized she was blaming Kurt for her actions, even though she had said, "You don't own me." It wasn't true. They were a team, and yes, he was hers just like she was his. They were each other's most important treasure. She started crying again. After about 10 minutes, she got in her car and drove to another hotel. It was a restless night. She had dreams, nightmares really, about Kurt rejecting her, telling her he never loved her, and that she was just there for his pleasure. The next morning, she decided to go to his workplace and talk to him. Kurt, around 10 o'clock, he got a call from the receptionist saying someone was in the lobby waiting for him. I wonder who that could be, he thought. When he reached the receptionist, she said, "That woman asked for you," pointing to the lobby. He looked around but saw no one there. He laughed and said, "Nice one, Chloe. Tease the new guy to make him feel part of the team." Then he turned and walked back to his desk, rubbing his hand as he went. Chloe looked confused as Kurt walked away. The woman had stood up and moved to the reception desk just as Kurt was talking. Audra was only 5 feet away when he turned and walked off. She stood there in shock. Kurt completely ignored her, not even acknowledging that she was in the same room. Chloe said sorry to the woman who claimed to be Kurt's wife. They had just had a big fight. Feeling confused, Chloe called the HR guy. When he came out to the lobby, he couldn't help but notice the lovely woman standing there. He wished he could look at her longer, but knew he had to behave as a good HR person. He wondered how many of the women in the office he could date if he didn't have to be so careful. "Hello, I'm Mr. Miller. How can I help you?" he asked. "I need to talk to my husband, but he won't speak to me," she replied. Mr. Miller looked at the receptionist, puzzled. "She's here to see Kurt Bryant, but when he saw her, he just walked away," the receptionist said. Now Mr. Miller was really confused. Just recently, Kurt had chatted with him about his benefits, saying he was single. "Kurt told me he's single and changed his benefits to show that. Did you guys get divorced?" "No, we just had a fight and he moved here," she answered. "I don't know what to say," Mr. Miller replied. "Call Los Angeles. They can tell you the truth. Talk to his old boss, Mr. Haven," she suggested. "Even if what you say is right, it seems like he doesn't want to talk to you. Please, just talk to him for me," she begged. "Okay, let me speak with him," Mr. Miller said. When he spoke to Kurt, Kurt was very clear that he was not married and never had been. Mr. Miller went back to the woman and told her what Kurt said. She insisted she was his wife and even showed him her driver's license. She had the same last name as Kurt and an address from L.A. She was so sure it made him want to call the L.A. office. Mr. Haven confirmed that Kurt was married when he worked there. He said Audra had come in to talk to him after Kurt moved. The way he described Audra matched the woman in the lobby, and her address was the same as what was on her license. "Please leave your number with Chloe, and I will find out what's really going on. Are you staying in town?" he asked. Then he thought, a woman like her must be causing trouble, or else why would Kurt want to leave? Mr. Miller looked into it some more. He was still surprised when he spoke with Kurt again about his marriage. He prided himself on understanding people and felt that Kurt was being honest. That's when he decided to call a psychologist friend. Since Northrop Grumman is a military contractor, it was very important to make sure employees were mentally healthy. His friend had an opening the next day, so Mr. Miller set up a visit for Kurt. Then he called Audra. "Mrs. Bryant, something doesn't add up here. I spoke with your husband, and he insists he has no wife." "I can guarantee that I am," she replied. "I believe you," Mr. Miller said. Here's the rewritten text with simpler language and clearer expression, while avoiding any inappropriate content. Everything I found points to that. I have an appointment for Kurt with a psychologist tomorrow afternoon. Let me ask you, has he had any recent head injuries? I don't think so, but I haven't seen him in weeks. Well, the psychologist should be able to help him. Kurt was sitting in Dr. Afton's office. The doctor said, "So, Kurt, your job has asked for this evaluation. It is likely related to some government rules." "Okay," Kurt replied, unsure why he was there. "Tell me about yourself. Give me a short story of your life." Kurt spent the next 15 minutes sharing his story. The doctor asked questions now and then. At the end, the doctor asked, "Can you tell me about your relationship with your mother?" Kurt talked about growing up in Nebraska. He felt nothing but love from his mom. They were very close. "What about girlfriends?" the doctor asked. Kurt explained how he dated. He had a girlfriend in 11th grade, but she wanted to date other boys before college, so they broke up. He felt hurt, but he dated other girls during his senior year. So, he thought it was for the best. In college, there was one girl he dated for 2.5 years. They even talked about getting married after graduation. But that relationship ended badly. She started seeing a football player without telling him. He found out from a friend and confronted her. They broke up and never got married. After college, he focused on his job. He dated a few times, but didn't have time for a serious relationship. "What do you think about being married?" the doctor asked. "I'm not against it, but I don't think it will happen. I'm getting close to 30, and while I might want to get married, I'm not sure I can trust someone. Plus, I'm used to my own ways." After more questions, the doctor let Kurt go. He then called Mr. Miller. "I checked his background," Mr. Miller said. "He is definitely married. How do you explain this?" "Something big must have happened for him to forget some things. Are we sure he didn't have an accident?" "What do you mean by forgetfulness?" "Our brains can block out certain events to protect us. People who have accidents might not remember things that happened before, during, and after the event. The memory might still be there deep inside, but they can't reach it unless something helps them remember." "I will talk to his wife to see if something happened that could have caused this," Mr. Miller said. He called Audra and explained that the doctor thought it was forgetfulness. "What happened right before he moved here?" Audra was silent. He could see that something important was going on, and she didn't want to talk about it. "Maybe it would be better if I talked to you face to face. Sometimes it helps to have someone to lean on," he suggested. He also thought spending time with this beautiful woman wouldn't be so bad. They met at a restaurant close to where they worked. He shared what the doctor had told him. Then he asked, what happened that made him forget he was married to such a wonderful woman? She didn't say much, only that they had a big fight about a week before he went to Wyoming. "It must have been something really upsetting for him to forget everything," he said. Then she broke down. "I cheated on him with my boss," she finally said. Just then, Audra heard Kurt's voice. She recognized it in the quiet restaurant. She turned and saw him talking to the person at the front desk. "I have a takeout order." "What's the name?" the hostess asked. "Kurt Bryant." "I'll go check on that, Mr. Bryant," she replied, and went into the kitchen. Seeing her chance, Audra rushed over to him. "Kurt! Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me." He stood there, not looking at her at all. "Kurt," she said, grabbing his arm. His arm felt like it was just hanging there. She pulled on it, and it moved, but he didn't respond. She stood right in front of him, and yet he ignored her. She started screaming and stomping her feet. The hostess returned with Kurt's food and asked Audra, "Miss, what's wrong? This is my husband, and he won't talk to me." Through all of this, Kurt remained silent. He saw his food and asked, "Is that my food?" The hostess hesitated. Oh, yes. I've already paid for it," he said. Audra was still holding on to one arm when he took the food with his other hand. "Thank you," he said to the hostess, and turned to leave. He ended up pulling Audra along with him since she wouldn't let go. He went to his car, put the food on the roof, unlocked the car with his remote, and opened the car door right into Audra. While this happened, Audra kept begging Kurt to say something to her, anything at all. When the door hit her, she lost her hold on his arm. He took the food and got inside the car, locking the door behind him. She began banging on the window, but Kurt just started the car and drove off. Audra had to jump back quickly to avoid getting hit. As Kurt drove away, she sank to the ground. During all of this, Mr. Miller had been watching. He couldn't believe what he saw. He went over to Audra and helped her up, walking her back to the restaurant. They talked about what had just happened, both surprised at how Kurt had completely ignored her. "I will have the psychologist speak to him again. Can you send me photos of you and Kurt together?" he asked. "Sure, I have a lot of them." "I can send them using my phone." "Great, send them to my phone and I'll pass them to him. Do you have a picture of just you? Maybe something that can help him remember?" "Oh, yes, but it's a bit personal," Audra said with hesitation. "It might be just what he needs to recall," he replied, thinking, "and I wouldn't mind keeping it for myself." Kurt was called into Mr. Miller's office and sent to the psychologist's office again. He was confused about why he had to go back. "Mr. Bryant, please take a seat." "Can I ask why I need another checkup? Is there a problem?" "Just a follow-up. It won't take long," he said. Mr. Miller had told him about what happened the day before at the restaurant. He also sent him some photos. "Do you know a Miss Audra Jackson?" using her maiden name. "No, I don't remember anyone by that name," he said while rubbing his hand. "Can you look at this photo and tell me what you see?" It was a picture of Kurt and Audra at a restaurant shortly after they began dating. "It's a picture of me at a restaurant I often visited in L.A. "Who else is in the photo?" "There are a few people in the back, but I don't know them. Just some customers." The doctor examined the photo. Kurt was clearly shown sitting with his arm around a woman Mr. Miller said was his wife. The doctor tried another photo. "That's me at the beach, by the cabana. How did you get these pictures? Is someone watching me?" "Oh, no. I got them from Mr. Miller. He got them from a friend of yours in L.A. He showed Kurt a few more photos, but the answer was the same. Even though his wife was in every picture, he couldn't see her. He was starting to feel a bit annoyed, still rubbing his hand. "Just one more, Mr. Bryant," the doctor said as he showed him the photo of his wife in bed. "It looks like a fancy hotel room," Kurt said. "Okay, Kurt. Thank you. That's all for now." Feeling dismissed, Kurt stood up and left to go back to work. When Mr. Miller heard about the appointment, he asked, "Should I worry about him working here?" "No, I don't think so. He seems to be doing fine. The only issue is his inability to remember anything about his wife. As far as I can tell, there's no problem. He might recall those memories someday, but he might not. Those years with her seem to be lost in his work life. However, if he starts to remember or has trouble with his past, please contact me." Mr. Miller then called Audra. "Mrs. Bryant, I talked to the doctor. The pictures didn't help. It's selective amnesia. He has forgotten about you and your marriage." Audrey thought about what Kurt had said to her before she left the bedroom, before she ended her marriage to be with her boss. She didn't say goodbye. She just hung up. Kurt had told her that she could forget about being married because he had already forgotten. She finally realized that she had ruined her marriage. She also needed to return to work, so she started packing for the drive back to L.A. While packing, she thought about her marriage ending and her job. She felt sad about her marriage but had mixed feelings about her job. For now, she had to keep working there. She needed money to live. and her job as HR director paid well. But she knew her heart wouldn't be in it like it used to be. As she prepared to leave and settled her hotel bill, she opened her Gucci purse to find her car keys. At the bottom of her purse, she saw Kurt's ring. She had brought it, hoping they would get back together. What would she do with it now? She decided to think about that later. As she began her long drive home, tears in her eyes, she spoke softly. "I hope you find happiness, Kurt." About 1 year later. "Audra," Chet Halverson said, "why do you look so sad?" "This weekend is 1 year," she replied quietly. "I understand," he said. And he truly did. After Audra returned from her break, she seemed distant. Chet tried to cheer her up and even suggested doing something fun like they had before, but she firmly declined. She told him she wasn't interested and that any further attempts to act more than friends would lead to serious consequences. He took her warning seriously and didn't approach her anymore. A week later, Audra filed for divorce. She knew her marriage was over, yet she had hoped Kurt would realize how good their time together had been. But when she talked to Mr. Miller, it became clear Kurt still hadn't acknowledged their marriage. When the divorce papers came in the mail, Kurt opened the envelope with curiosity. However, as he read the first few lines, he froze. He dropped the envelope and its papers into the trash can. He then absent-mindedly rubbed his left hand. 90 days later, Audra was with her lawyer in front of a judge. She had the doctor's report and Mr. Miller's report, which made it clear that the divorce should be granted. She would always remember her marriage to Kurt, but she hoped to find someone new and learn from her mistakes. That weekend, Chet was in his stable telling his groomer to prepare the thoroughbred for riding. The groomer looked at him in surprise. Chet did not enjoy riding the horse. It was too jumpy for him. He liked the quarter horse because it was a much smoother ride. But then Audra talked about finishing her divorce, and Chet thought about how her husband had managed to ride that horse like a pro. Chet also remembered how he had shown up her husband during that weekend. He wanted to prove he was not less than the other man, especially since that man let go of such a lovely woman. Chet had been riding on the trails for about 30 minutes when suddenly the horse neighed loudly and threw him off. He hit the ground hard. As he lay there, he felt a sharp pain in his left hand. He pulled his hand close to his chest and looked up just in time to see the horse raise its front legs and come down right on him. When he woke up, he was in a hospital 3 days later. His hand was wrapped in a bandage and he felt lost, trying to recall what had happened. A nurse noticed him moving and came into the room. "Mr. Halverson, how do you feel? You are in the hospital because of an accident. I will call the doctor and she will explain everything to you." Before he could respond or ask anything, she left the room. Chet wondered what had gone wrong. He couldn't remember much. He checked how he felt. His hand still hurt. He remembered that part clearly. His back was sore, but besides that, he felt all right. Then the doctor entered the room. She was a pretty redhead in her early 40s with a serious but kind look on her face. "Mr. Halverson, I'm Dr. Patton. How do you feel?" "My hand hurts, and my back too, but other than that, I'm okay." "You fell quite hard from your horse. What do you remember about the fall?" "I was riding my thoroughbred in the hills near my home." He hoped to impress the doctor. "Then something scared the horse, and it bucked me off. I remember falling to the ground, then my hand hurting. That's all I recall." "We'll talk about your hand soon. Can you tell me how your body feels? Where else do you hurt?" "My back hurts from hitting the ground." "Mr. Halverson?" "Just call me Chet," he said. There was no reason not to be friendly. "Okay, Chet. Now I need you to tell me, can you feel your toes?" Chet thought hard, and panic began to rise. He couldn't feel his toes or his feet or even his legs. He looked down to check if they were still there. They were, but he could not feel them, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't move them. The horse accidentally landed on your lower body with its front legs. You have some damage inside, and your pelvic bone is broken. If it wasn't for your neighbor being on the trails and calling for help right away, you might not have made it due to internal bleeding. Chet was in shock. The doctor continued, "Your spinal cord was damaged, and you can't feel or move your legs anymore." Chet felt confused. The doctor kept explaining what had happened to him and what would happen next, but he couldn't focus. He was paralyzed from the waist down, and that's all that filled his mind. Kurt?" Mr. Miller asked. "You've been smiling all week. Is there a reason? Did you think of something happy from the past?" "No, I don't really know why, but life feels great right now. I shouldn't be Mr. Sad. It's a sunny day and this week has just been wonderful." Kurt loved his job. He had been working on a special project for a year. It was about a remote control system for drones. They had tested it the weekend before, and he could fly a 3-foot-wide drone from far away. It could hit a target accurately from 3,000 feet up. This technology would help the military and police in many ways and give them a big advantage. He stood talking to Mr. Miller, rubbing the palm of his left hand, feeling a circle on his skin. "I'm happy for you, Kurt." "Keep up the good work," Mr. Miller said. 3 weeks later, Chet was home, trying to adjust to his new life. He moved to a bedroom on the main floor because his bedroom was upstairs, and his wheelchair couldn't fit there. He had to get used to having a colostomy bag and all the new tasks that came with this change. "What is my life now?" he thought. His groomer, cook, and now nurse had all been kind to him in this hard time, but they were just hired help. Besides a few neighbors and the guy who found him and called for help, no one else had visited him. Did he have any real friends, or were they all just people he knew? As he thought this and looked out at the hills behind his house, his groomer came in, wearing a worried look. "What is it?" Chet asked. "Sir, I think I need to call the vet tomorrow," the groomer said. "Why's that?" "There's a sore that won't heal, no matter what cream I've used. Let me show you a picture." In the photo, Chet saw a sore, a clear circle about the size of a nickel. Chet opened his left hand and showed it to the groomer. They both stared in surprise. In his palm was also a perfect circle the same size as a nickel. They didn't know what to think. That night, as Chet moved his wheelchair to the side of his bed, he took off his watch and set it on the nightstand. Something caught his eye. There was an indent on the nightstand. He looked at it and then back at his hand. Before moving on to the second story, please let me know your opinion. Do you like the story long or short, a series or separate parts? The comments section is always welcome, and don't forget to let me know which of these two stories you like better. Story 2. They say smell is the most powerful of all the senses. It can bring back memories, even from when you were a kid. The smell I noticed when I opened my mailbox wasn't from my childhood, but I knew it right away. It brought back memories and made me feel bad. The scent was Christian Dior's Dune. It had been my wife's favorite perfume for most of our time together. I knew why I was smelling it. She must have sent me an invitation to her upcoming wedding. What a jerk. Like I want to watch her get married to someone else. I'd already seen her with him in our home, which is why she is now my ex-wife. I went through the mail, pushing aside the bills and junk until I found it. Of course, it was a fancy envelope with my name and address written in deep purple ink, her favorite color. She always said it was the color of royalty. Royalty? She was no more royal than my dog, who she took in the divorce. Am I upset? Yes, I am. She cheated on me with my longtime rival. I almost didn't open the invitation, but I wanted to know when the wedding was so I could conveniently make plans to be away. July 23rd at 3 p.m. I could definitely find somewhere else to be. I looked at the name of the church where the ceremony would happen. I couldn't believe she was getting remarried in a church. The fanciest church in the city. How could she even think of marrying in a church after what she did? But her new fiancé is rich, so I guess it's only the best for her. I tossed the invitation into the garbage. I had been in a good mood before I got home. Now I felt down. I had a nice day at work. One of the new staff members, Sabrina, stopped by my desk and we joked a bit. I hoped she was flirting and not just being friendly. The last year and a half had been hard, but her attention really made me feel good. I thought about my ex-wife. We had spent 26 years together, 23 of those as a married couple. I grabbed a beer from the fridge, turned on the TV, and sank onto the couch. I'm not sure how long I sat there. When I took the last sip from the bottle, it was warm. I looked at the empty bottle and thought about getting another one when my phone rang. It was my daughter, Shayna. "Hello, sweetheart," I said. "Hey, Dad, how are you doing?" "Well, I was doing great until I came home and checked the mail." "So you must have gotten the invitation too," she said. "Yeah, can you believe it?" "I'm sorry, Dad. I told her not to send you one, but she insisted. She said, he needs to get over it. He can come to the wedding to see his daughter as a bridesmaid. Well, I have no plans to go. I already tossed the invitation in the trash where it belongs. Dad, can you think about it again? Sweetheart, I'm planning to be out of town that weekend, I said. Dad, I really want you there. I'll need your support. You know I don't want to be in the wedding, but she made me feel bad. She wanted me to be the maid of honor, but I told her, no way. Shayna, you don't need my support. Brent will be there for you. Dad, what will you do next year when Brent and I get married? Are you going to skip that wedding too? Of course not, honey. I can't wait to walk you down the aisle. So you will have to be in the same church as them next year. Can't you just be the better man and come to this one? I don't think I'm the better man, sweetheart, I replied. Well, please think about it, Dad. I really want you there with me. I promise I'll think about it. I told her, but I didn't think I could just put these feelings behind me. Jill and I were supposed to be together forever. It seemed like she wanted something new instead of sticking with me. As I sat there thinking, I decided to do something I had done many times before. When I was younger, I was taught to write down my problems. Writing it all down helps. I could deal with each worry one at a time instead of feeling overwhelmed. While I wrote, I realized that the fact that Ron, her new fiancé, had been my rival since junior high made the hurt even worse. I knew I couldn't tell him in person how I felt, so I thought I'd write it down. I didn't plan to give it to him, but it might help me. Ron, I guess the best man won. Jill has chosen to be with you for the rest of her life. Since junior high, we've been in a race. You were my biggest rival. Even in high school, we were competing. Jill was someone we both wanted, but she chose you at first. Later, while you were away in college, she chose me. But I guess even after all these years, you couldn't let go that Jill had married me. One would think you would have moved on, but you went after her since she was mine. I'm angry with you, but I'm even more upset with my loving wife, or should I say my ex-wife. The fact that she gave in to your charms shows me that even after 26 years, I didn't really know her. When we first started dating, we shared all our hopes, dreams, and fears for hours. By the end of our marriage, we didn't talk much at all. Well, I didn't talk much. She did all the talking. On and on. I guess I should have listened more. Maybe I would have picked up on the signs that she was leaving me. I keep thinking about all the things I used to love about Jill. Now you will be the one to see all the real parts of her. You'll wake up beside her and see her without any makeup. She'll have messy hair and morning breath. You'll be the only one who sees her like this. Right away, she'll go to the bathroom to brush her hair and teeth and put on makeup. You might want to get to the bathroom before she does, or you'll be waiting a long time. After I wrote this, I put the pages down and decided to go to the bar to forget my problems. I was a little embarrassed to say I needed an Uber to get home because I had drunk too much to drive. The next day was Saturday, so I slept off my hangover. I didn't get out of bed until 2 p.m. I just could not find a reason to get up before then. The smell of sweat finally pushed me to get up. I needed a shower and something to eat. After my shower, I felt better, so I went to get a burger at the pub. I had to use Uber to go back and get my car anyway. The burger helped, along with a little drink to ease my headache. That next week, I still felt down. Sabrina noticed and asked me what was wrong. I said, problems with my ex. She hadn't worked there when all my trouble started, so she didn't know everything. Kurt, she said, let's go get dinner after work. I don't like seeing you so sad. I wouldn't want to make you feel bad, too, I told her. Don't worry, maybe I can help cheer you up. Was she flirting? I wasn't sure since I had been out of the dating scene for so long. Dinner was nice. We talked, and she asked me about what happened with Jill. She could see I still felt a lot of anger toward my ex and her new partner. I apologized for sharing my problems and asked her about her relationships. She told me about her marriage to a man who drank too much and a long relationship of 6 years with someone who didn't want to get married. She struggled with this. Did he not love her? Did he want to date other people? She wanted kids, but she felt she needed to be married first. She wanted to know that he would stick around. As we ate, we took turns talking about a lot of things. I could tell we had a lot in common: politics, religion, family, vacations, and what the future might hold. When we finished our meal, we walked out to the parking lot. Then, out of nowhere, she stepped up to me and gave me a hug. I was surprised and thought, who is this young woman who cares about me? As she walked to her car, I just stared at her. She had to be at least 10 years younger than me. She was a small Latina woman who always seemed to have a smile on her face. I really wanted to know more about her story. We should do this again soon. Sabrina had definitely made me feel better. As I drove to my apartment, I was smiling and singing along with the radio. It was some country song I had heard many times before. When I walked into my living room, I saw the letter I had started writing. My smile faded, but I felt much better than when I had begun that letter. Having a young woman care enough to try to cheer me up really changed how I saw things. I sat down, picked up the paper, and thought about my ex-wife. Our marriage wasn't perfect, but whose is? If you talk to any couple, they will tell you that. There are little things your partner does that can drive you crazy if you focus on them. You learn to ignore those things or at least get used to them. This made me think of the dinner with Sabrina. I started comparing her to Jill, my ex. There was something different about them. Then it hit me. I knew what was different. It was the sound of Jill's fork tapping on her plate. My ex had a habit of tapping her fork 3 times before she took a bite. I once asked her why she did that. She didn't even realize she was doing it. When she thought about it, she gave a reason. I do it to make sure all the food is on my fork so I don't drop any. I suppose that's a good reason, and I learned to live with it. In fact, I learned to ignore it. One thing I do know is that I won't miss eating with her. I picked up my pen and started writing again. When we were first married, I thought it was cute how she always tapped her fork 3 times on her plate before eating. But towards the end, it really annoyed me. I would hear that clink, clink, clink during our meals, even when we went out for dinner. The next week at work, Sabrina told me she enjoyed the time we spent together. I replied politely, "So did I. We should do that again." "When?" she asked. That surprised me a little. How about Friday, unless you already have plans?" "Nope, I'm free for you," she said with a smile. There it was again. Was she flirting or just being friendly? That night, when I got home to my apartment, I was whistling a tune. I saw the letter on the coffee table and thought, not tonight. I don't even want to think about my ex. Friday came, and once again we were out enjoying a meal together. I was nervous. It was a Friday night, and I was having dinner, which we had actually planned, with a beautiful woman. I guess it was a date. It had been so long since I had gone out like this that I didn't know what to expect or what she might expect of me. But I did know that this woman in front of me was nice to be with and also nice to look at. I could tell she wanted to know more about me. After we finished eating, we drove around for a while. I felt nervous, and maybe she did too, but when the car was quiet, we didn't feel the need to fill the silence with pointless chatter. I liked that we were comfortable just being together in the car while I drove. At the end of the night, I took her back to her condo. We chatted for a little bit, then she went inside. When I got back to my apartment, I saw the letter on my coffee table. I couldn't help but smile. A week later, on Saturday afternoon, my daughter Shayna called me. She asked, "Dad, did you send back your RSVP to Mom?" "No, sweetheart. I told you I threw that invitation in the trash." "Dad, can you please go for me?" "Why do you want me to go so much, Shayna? Do you really think I want to see that guy smiling at me as he marries your mom?" "Dad, I understand you two don't get along, but if you don't go, he will think he has won." "I don't know, honey. I don't think your mom wants me there. I think he made her send that invitation." "Dad, please think about it." "I'll think about it, sweetie, but don't expect too much." After we hung up, I felt a bit sad. Why didn't Shayna get how I felt? I needed to cheer up, so I decided to call Sabrina. "Hey, Sabrina, how are you?" I asked. "I was just thinking about you. Do you have any plans today?" she replied. "That makes me happy. I don't have anything planned. Do you have an idea?" "I'd like to go on a road trip. Are you in?" "Where to?" I asked. "Let's just get in my car and see where the road takes us," she said. "Sounds good. I hope you don't take that the wrong way," I added quickly. I didn't want to make her feel uncomfortable. We ended up driving through the countryside, enjoying the beautiful views. We took some high mountain roads where the sights were amazing. We stopped at a lookout point to see the view. It was a bit cold, so I put my arm around her to keep us warm. She looked up at me, and I looked down into her eyes and kissed her. It wasn't a long kiss, just one that said, I like you. It was our first kiss. I had held back before because I didn't want to scare her away. Besides, it had been almost 30 years since I had kissed anyone other than my ex-wife. She smiled back and hugged me, which felt nice. We walked together, arms linked. Over the past weeks, we had shared stories about our past partners. She told me that she got married in her early 20s to a man who drank too much and became abusive. Luckily, she said, I realized early on that he wouldn't stop drinking, so I made a choice not to have any children with him. I didn't want to bring them up with a father who drank too much. We talked again about my divorce. She couldn't believe that after so many years, my ex-husband thought I was not good or rich enough. As we walked, I started talking about my daughter. When I said my daughter was 22, she replied, "Oh, she's 10 years younger than me." Sabrina is 32, I thought. What am I doing? I'm 16 years older. So I asked her, Sabrina, you know I'm 48, right? Why would you want to hang out with someone so much older? She looked at me with a fierce gaze. Then she said, Kurt, if you can't see that I like you and that your age doesn't matter to me, then maybe I don't know you at all. Maybe you should find someone who's old enough so we won't waste our time. I stared at her. She had moved a little away from me. I messed up, I thought as I sat on a rock bench nearby. Why am I so foolish? I have something good with someone who makes me happy and I go and ruin it. I glanced at her. She was turned away, but I could see tears on her cheeks. I stood up and walked over to her. I carefully put my hands on her shoulders and gently leaned against her back. I'm sorry. I'm an idiot. I guess I just can't believe a beautiful woman would want to be with me. I'm not handsome. Not at all. I'm just average. She turned her head a bit, and I could see tears still falling. Sabrina, I know it's early in our relationship, but I have strong feelings for you. I was just trying to protect myself from getting hurt again. She turned to face me. You think I'm not scared? My ex-husband was an abusive drunk. He wasn't like that before we married. At least I didn't see it. After him, I was with someone who wouldn't commit. I believe you're different, and I thought we were building something special. I'm not looking for flings. I want a real relationship with someone I care about. I thought I found that in you, but if all you think about is our age difference, maybe we shouldn't be friends at all. I looked at her. The makeup she wore was smudged, but she was still the most beautiful woman in the world to me. I gently pulled her into a hug. After a brief hug, I stepped back a little and kissed her. This time I kissed her with all my heart. She quickly kissed me back, and we stood there, lost in each other under the warm sun. It felt like we were there for a long time, and when we finally stopped, I noticed some dark clouds moving in. I looked at Sabrina and said, Those clouds look a bit scary. We should head back. Actually, let's skip the pretty route and just take the highway back. She looked at me and asked, How about a home-cooked Mexican dinner when we get back? That sounds great, but can I help? I've never had a man in my kitchen before, but if you want to help, I'll give it a try, she replied. I was happy and a bit surprised that neither of her two ex-boyfriends had helped her in the kitchen. I wondered if that was just how things were in her culture. On the way back, I noticed something different about Sabrina compared to Jill. It was a good thing, and it made me smile. I wanted to write this down in my letter to the asshole. Dinner was amazing. Even though Sabrina seemed a little shy about me helping, we quickly started working together like a team. Saying the food was great didn't capture how good it really was. It was much better than the authentic food you find in grocery stores or restaurants. She explained that the recipes had been passed down from her grandmother to her, generation after generation. That amazed me. I couldn't think of anything my family had passed down other than our looks. We ended the night on the couch, sharing hugs and kisses. It felt wonderful to have her close to me. We didn't go any further, though. I think we both were a little hesitant, and I didn't want to rush things. I wanted to take my time and build our relationship. When I got home that night, I went right to my letter. At first, I wasn't sure if I would send it. I just needed to express what I was feeling. Now, I still wasn't sure, but I was thinking about sending it. Writing the letter was helpful. It let me let go of some anger, so I kept it on the coffee table to write whenever I had something to say. Tonight, I had something on my mind. I remembered when we first got married, young and in love. We were just starting our lives together and our new jobs. Money was a little tight, so instead of going somewhere fancy for our honeymoon, We drove to the Poconos in Pennsylvania. We took turns driving for the 6-hour trip. When you're newly married, little things don't bother you much. But it was the first time I realized that Jill didn't like using cruise control. That wouldn't be a big issue, except she changed speed by 2 or 3 miles per hour every 20 to 30 seconds. I started to feel a bit sick. After we stopped for lunch, I told Jill I would drive the rest of the way. So, from then on, I drove on our long trips. I put the letter down. Driving with Sabrina today made me feel that long drives wouldn't be a problem for me in the future. I needed to write more to clear my mind. When Jill and I got married, it had all started so well. I needed to tell the guy what I felt. Our honeymoon was amazing. We tried everything together, exploring all kinds of adventures. But for the last 10 years, things have changed. We've only done the same thing again and again. I haven't enjoyed anything new or exciting. It used to be fun, but now it feels dull. Maybe she is more adventurous with you. I hope she makes you happier than I've been these last years. At first, I thought her mood changes might just be part of getting older, or maybe she got bored with me, which is why she started seeing you. As time goes by, we all change. We try to fight those signs of getting older. Jill used to have such nice, firm boobs when we got married, and she kept that for a long time. She had a cute mole on her right boob that you could see when she wore her pretty dresses. It caught people's attention. But now that mole looks different, not as charming as before. Even with all this, I hoped we would stay together for many more years. But you two will probably have a long time to be with each other. In the end, you've won. Enjoy your time together. Sincerely, your rival, Kurt Davidson. I finished the letter. I could write more about the little things that annoyed me, things I learned to accept, but I was ready to move on and focus on my future with Sabrina. The next morning, I called Sabrina. She picked up and said, "Hello, do you miss me already?" "Yes, I really do," I replied with a smile. "I was wondering if you had plans for the long 4th of July weekend? It was 2 weeks away, but I wanted to do something special." "No. What do you want to plan?" "Well, I don't want to rush things, but would you like to get away for a few days? I thought we might go to Virginia Beach." Then, not wanting to pressure her, I quickly added, "We can book 2 hotel rooms. I don't want you to feel uneasy." Her response surprised me. It showed she cared. "I won't feel uneasy, but I worry that you might not be ready yet. Your divorce seems tough for you." "Oh, I'm ready," I said, trying to reassure her. I know I was down for a bit. Getting the invite to my ex's wedding stirred up old feelings. Thankfully, you have helped me feel better. "I thought after yesterday you'd be ready to take the next step," she suggested. "Yesterday was fantastic. These past few weeks, I was scared of moving too fast." "It's been a long time for me, and I don't jump into relationships easily." "Neither do I, Kurt. I'm comfortable with you, and I know you're a good person." Feeling brave, I replied, "I'm good even when I'm bad, trying to be funny." She laughed and said, "I'll have to watch you then." I enjoyed our playful conversation. It made me feel like we were past the awkward stage of trying to impress each other. We decided to meet for lunch, and I ended the call with a big smile. I quickly went online and booked a room with 2 queen beds, one for fun and one for sleeping. I guess I have my moments. The next week, Shayna called me. "Dad, Mom says you're not going to her wedding. She hasn't received your RSVP. Can you go? I wish you would for me." "Shayna, why would I need to go? It's not your wedding." "I want to dance with you, Dad." "Oh, no. How could I say no without hurting my daughter? I can dance with you next year at your wedding." "Why not come for just a few hours?" she begged. I'd feel like everyone would be staring at me. They'd think, "There's the ex-husband who was left for this new guy." "Oh, Dad, that's not true." "I think they would, sweetheart." "Then bring a date. Show them you've moved on, too." "We'll see," I said. "Dad, the wedding is in a month, please," she pleaded again. "We'll see. That's all I can say right now." I changed the subject, and we chatted about other things in her life. She was a busy girl, juggling many activities. Later that week, Sabrina came over with takeout. "Surprise! I wanted to spend the evening with my favorite guy." I happily invited her in. She put the food on the table and asked, "Do you want to eat from the containers, or should we use plates?" I liked that she was relaxed, but I didn't want to seem uncivilized. "I'm sure I have some clean plates somewhere. Let's sit at the table." "I'm fine with either," she said. I got plates and silverware, and we sat down to eat and talk. While we enjoyed our meal, she took off her shoes and brushed her foot up and down my leg. I looked at her and joked, "Looks like the Kung Pao chicken isn't the only thing that's hot tonight." She gave me a playful look and said, "I don't know what you mean." I just smiled as she continued to rub my leg. After dinner, we moved to the living room and sat on the couch, looking at each other as we started kissing. Things got intense, and I gently touched her through her blouse. She was small, but I enjoyed being close to her. She stepped back and said, "I need to go to the bathroom, but don't forget where we were." Wow, what a woman. She wasn't gone long, but while she was away, I went into the kitchen. I was about to pour us some wine when I asked her, "Do you want white or red?" "I'd rather have a beer," she said. Wow, what a woman. I grabbed a couple of beers and walked back to the living room. As I turned the corner, I stopped. She was focused on reading my letter to the jerk. She looked up at me with a worried look and said, "Sorry, I shouldn't have read your stuff. I feel bad about it." How could I be mad at such a beautiful face? It was clear she felt sorry. Plus, she felt at ease enough to read it in the first place. It had been on the table where I left it. Let me explain. "You don't have to," she said. "I shouldn't have been so nosy." "Sabrina, it's fine that you read it. I wrote it to get my feelings out. It's for the jerk who is marrying my ex-wife. I started writing it when I got the wedding invite. It's cheaper than therapy. I just add to the letter now and then. I probably won't send it, but it helps me to write it." "I can see that," she replied. "It looks like you're dealing with your pain. What you wrote was interesting, though." I flushed, remembering that I had written about my life with my ex. Yeah, I might have been a bit harsh at the end. "Kurt, it's how you feel. If it helps you move on, then what's wrong with that?" Wow, what a woman. "Sabrina, you are just what I need." I sat down next to her, took the letter from her hand and put it back on the table. Then, I kissed her deeply. Soon enough, my hand went back to where I had left off. I pulled back from her lips and looked at her. "What? Are you upset that I got rid of your barrier?" I smiled and said, "So where were we?" We spent the rest of the evening on the couch, getting more comfortable with each other. By the end, we were both bare, and we took care of each other. She reached her peak at least twice, and I did once. Leading up to our long weekend, we hung out most nights or talked on the phone. We were learning so much about each other. On Thursday, before the holiday weekend, I got a call from Shayna. "Dad, I'm calling to see if you'll go to the wedding." I was feeling a bit annoyed, even though she was my daughter. "Shayna," I asked, "is your mom telling you to do this?" "No, Dad, honestly, I think she'd prefer if you didn't come." She didn't want any trouble, but Ron kept pushing. "Why would she think I'd cause a scene?" I fired back. "Because he's been your rival since school," she said. "Then why do you want me to go so badly?" "Do you want me to make a scene?" I asked, a bit angrily. "No, Dad. I want you to show Mom and Ron that you're the bigger person. I think it could help you. It's time to deal with it and move on," she explained. My daughter wanted me to move on, but I had already done that. My relationship with Sabrina was serious. We were committed to each other. "Sweetie, I'm okay. I've moved on. Let Ron have her and deal with everything that comes with it." "Yeah, it sounds like you've really moved on," she said, sounding sarcastic. "Trust me, I have. Of course, I still feel angry at times. I wouldn't mind if he didn't exist anymore, but I have moved on. Sorry, Dad, I didn't mean to upset you. I think I should let you go now before I say something that might hurt your feelings. Sorry, Dad. I'll talk to you next week." Later that night, when Sabrina called me, she noticed something was off. "What's wrong?" she asked. "It's nothing. My daughter keeps pushing me to go to my ex's wedding. I don't understand why," I replied, feeling tense. "Can we talk about this over the weekend when you're calmer?" she suggested. "I'm sorry, I don't mean to take it out on you. It's okay, Kurt. We'll get through this together." We talked for a while longer and made plans for me to pick her up in the morning. The next morning, when she stepped out of her condo, I was surprised. Sabrina was wearing a bright yellow dress with flowers that looked great on her. She had an overnight bag that looked light, just a few clothes for 3 days. She opened the door to my car, placed her bag in the back, and sat in the front seat. "I'm sorry," I said. "I would have opened the door for you, but I didn't want to stand up and make things awkward." She smiled and said, "You say the nicest things." Wow, I thought. What a wonderful person. I drove us to the hotel by the beach, talking easily the whole way. As I looked at her sitting there, I felt a strong attraction. It was clear she wasn't wearing a bra, and her legs looked amazing. When we arrived at the hotel, we quickly checked in and went up to our room. The view was stunning. As we stood there looking out, she turned to me with a smile and said, "Kurt, we've got a situation." I raised an eyebrow in confusion. Then she added with a playful tone, "I can't take you out in public looking like that." She grinned and leaned down, making things very interesting. "Let me relax a little before we go out for lunch." She quickly leaned in and kissed me softly. "You're going to make me lose control," I said, surprised. She pulled back and smiled. "Good. Give me a taste, and then we can go eat something good." Wow, what a woman. To be honest, I didn't last long. I was overwhelmed, and she smiled at me as she got up and fixed my shorts. She casually said, "All right, let's go." I was speechless as I followed her out of the door, into the elevator, and to my car, smiling the whole way. Before I started the car, I turned to her and kissed her tenderly. I knew that I could still taste what had just happened, but it didn't matter. This amazing woman treated me like a king, and I wanted to treat her like my queen. I was all in. I couldn't even tell you what we ate. All my thoughts and feelings were on her. "Kurt," she said, bringing me back to reality. I looked into her eyes. "Yes? Can I suggest something without upsetting you?" I thought for a moment and replied, "I can't promise not to get upset, but I'll try." "Thank you, Kurt. You know I care about you a lot." Uh-oh, I thought. What's coming next? "Kurt, I want to go with you to your ex-wife's wedding. I want to meet your daughter and show you off to everyone there. Plus, I want to thank Jill for giving you to me," she said with a playful smile. I was shocked. A huge smile spread across my face. Oh my God, I thought. This was perfect. I could walk in with her by my side. "By the smile on your face, I take that as a yes," she teased. "You will make me the proudest man at that wedding," I said. "We might have to leave the reception early to let the bride and groom shine." That night was amazing. We connected in a way I hadn't in a long time. It was sweet but exciting at the same time. Neither of us had been with anyone for a while, so we were both a bit eager. I did my best for my age, even though I didn't have much experience with other women. After being with someone for so long, it's easy to fall into a routine. But with a new partner, things can feel a bit strange. I'm sure she felt the same about me. However, I think we did well. We quickly learned about each other and found our rhythm. In the morning, I woke up next to this amazing woman, and she was beautiful. Sure, her hair was messy from the night before, but she still looked incredible. I thought she would head straight to the bathroom to get ready for the day, but instead, she turned to me, ran her fingers through her hair, and laid her head on my chest, giving me a warm hug. It felt really nice and comfortable. I just lay there and enjoyed the moment. Then, I kissed the top of her head, and she cuddled closer. Eventually, I got up to brush my teeth and use the bathroom. When I came out, I saw her still lying on the bed. I wished I could have taken a photo, but I knew I wouldn't need one to remember that sight. I would hold it in my memory forever. She saw me watching her and covered her face with a pillow. I asked her something I never said to my ex. Why hide such a beautiful face behind a pillow? She turned over and buried her head into the pile of pillows. Her back was fully visible. Then I joked, "There's a beautiful view at the back, too." She wiggled a bit, and I heard a soft laugh from under the pillows. I quickly got back on the bed and lay next to her, gently touching her back. She raised her head and kissed me deeply. I had brushed my teeth, but she hadn't. Still, her breath wasn't bad at all. Her mouth tasted nice. We stayed there for a while, just enjoying each other's touch, nothing more. Finally, we got out of bed after 10 o'clock. She went into the bathroom and closed the door. I called out, "Do you want me to make a reservation for lunch?" "Lunch?" she replied. "I'm hungry for breakfast. Just give me a few minutes." I was surprised. Jill usually took an hour. 5 minutes later, she came out of the bathroom with her hair combed and a bit of makeup on. She really looked beautiful. She went to her clothes, picked out a few things, and put them on the bed. She bent down to put on her underwear, and once again I saw a lovely sight. I said, "That's a nice view." She looked back at me and said, "I'm happy you like it. It's been with me all my life." I laughed. She was quick with her words. We spent the day walking on the beach, visiting shops, and enjoying local restaurants together. At dinner, we were at a cozy Italian restaurant, enjoying our food and chatting. She suddenly got quiet, which made me curious. She leaned in and whispered, "When we get back to the hotel, I want to try that wheelbarrow position you wrote about." My eyes widened, and a big smile spread across my face. "We can try anything you want." She looked at me with her lovely brown eyes, and I knew I might be in for an adventure. That night, we did try the wheelbarrow and many other things. It was a night for trying new things. She pushed me a little out of my comfort zone, telling me what she liked and wanted. I was eager to make her happy. By the end of the weekend, we felt so comfortable with each other, both emotionally and physically, that we didn't even watch the fireworks. We made our own fun. Our relationship took a big step forward. We were officially a couple. We both knew this was real, and we were excited to start a life together. That week, my daughter called again. "Dad, the wedding is in 15 days. Please, I'm asking you to be the better man and say yes to coming." I hesitated for a moment, making her a bit nervous on the other end. Then I said, "Okay, but only if one thing happens." "Great! What is it?" she asked. "I want to bring someone with me. You will need to meet her and accept her because she could be your stepmom." "What?" "Yeah, I think I'm in love." "How long have you been dating?" "Just a short time, but we really care about each other," I replied. "I can't wait to meet her," she said. "I knew you'd find someone." The wedding day arrived. I picked up Sabrina from her condo. She looked amazing. She wore a nice dress that showed off her figure and highlighted her natural beauty. A little makeup drew attention to her beautiful brown eyes. It was hard not to look at them. We sat toward the back of the church. I didn't want to take attention away from the bride. 3 days earlier, I had sent a letter to Ron. It felt good to write my feelings down, even though I probably shouldn't have sent it. He was my rival. As we sat in the pew, I noticed Ron looking for me. Our eyes met, and he came over, probably to brag. When he saw Sabrina, he almost fell over. She was so stunning that he knew I had won. Later, as he stood up front getting ready to marry, I saw a worried look on his face. It seemed like he was unsure about his choice. Epilogue. A year later, Shayna got married, and I walked her down the aisle feeling proud. Jill was there too, but Ron was not. They were getting a divorce, and it didn't even last a year. The everyday problems got to them, and he realized that life with her wasn't what he had hoped. The thrill is in the chase. Once you win the prize, it just collects dust. Jill struggled with the divorce. She told me she made a mistake, throwing away 25 years of love for a dream that wasn't real. He found fault with everything I did. Nothing was good enough for him. He even made me get surgery to change my body. He never seemed happy. "Kurt, can we start over?" "I'm sorry," she pleaded. She didn't know yet that Shayna hadn't told her I was marrying Sabrina next month. I hadn't sent her an invitation. I didn't need to be mean anymore. Did I feel sorry for her? No, she made her own choices, so she has to deal with the results. Just because I added some trouble to the situation doesn't mean she didn't bring this on herself. Hey, audience! If you liked this video and want to keep up with more thrilling stories, make sure to subscribe to Prince Cheating Tales and hit the notification bell. You don't want to miss out on our upcoming adventures. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next wonderful story.